Welcome back to The Sensitivity Doctor. This is Dr. Amelia Kelley. I have a question for you. Do you ever feel like you and your partner are just going around in circles, having the same argument over and over? Do you ever feel like you're constantly being blamed? Or do you ever feel like you're constantly trying to fix or save your partner? You're probably in something called the drama triangle. I cannot wait for you to listen to this episode today with Kitty Chambliss. She is the founder and creator of Loving Without Boundaries, which is a full community helping people in non-traditional and traditional relationships navigate their difficulties within those relationships. We break this down during this episode and how it plays into codependency and how to get out of it. We also unpack how highly sensitives can sometimes find themselves in this triangle a little too often. And the goal is to get to connection in the observer triangle. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and watch as we unpack these triangles and help you navigate your relationships with more love, more care, and more empathy. Enjoy. I can't believe I've never had you on my podcast. I feel like we've talked so many times that I thought I had.
We've definitely, you've been, I don't know how many times you've been on mine, maybe 2 or 3, including like when I take a Facebook Live,
right?
And then I turn it into a podcast. But yeah, you've been amazing. So I'm delighted to be here with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when I did the workshop, the sensitivity workshop with you, you had brought up our topic today in our conversation with your group. And anytime, thumbs up. And anytime, I don't know why I did that. And anytime I hear something I've never heard before, I'm like, I need to talk to someone about that. So you had brought up the drama triangle and observer stance. So I wanted to chat with you about that today. But before we dive in, can you tell our guests or our, audience who you are and, what your passions and life mission are? Because you've got a good community that you've been working with.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be delighted to. So my name is Kitty Chambliss, and I am a certified coach who specializes in working with people in helping them live their most authentic lives, free from jealousy and insecurity, shame and guilt, and the pain of infidelity in the sex positive and open relationship space, so that they fall back in love with themselves, they feel unstoppable. And that would also be serving the LGBTQ plus community and folks who maybe identify as polyamorous or relationship anarchists, or generally speaking, are coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy in some way. And this is definitely my passion work. This is my second career for me. And it started out as simply a blog post about 12 years ago.
Oh,
a blog
cool.
Called Loving Without Boundaries. And then that eventually I started up my own podcast, Loving Without Boundaries as well. And then I decided that I wanted to switch careers from a graphic designer who worked my way up to creative director at advertising agencies to becoming a certified relationship coach, specializing in this community that I felt was underserved and didn't have enough role models and mentors to help them through some of those tricky situations and the painful situations that can come up when one is a minority and also trying to do something that is a bit unusual to the average person walking down the street.
So you said a word again. Remember, I was saying every time there's a word I don't know, I'm like, my little bells go off. Relationship anarchist? Is that like someone who doesn't believe? Like, help me understand that.
Yeah, I'll do my best to explain it. So relationship anarchy is a form of consensual non-monogamy that prefers to not have any hierarchy, thinking that it's best to simply let relationships become what they are and not necessarily put labels on them. In some ways, it's leaning into a sense of freedom, but also in some ways, respectfulness for everyone, not saying this person in my life has a higher role than this person over here, and allowing those to develop as they will.
I think I have a client like that now that I'm thinking about it, because they are in a handful of relationships, and I think I once asked during a session, just ignorantly, I asked, is there a primary? And I guess that's not a an unreasonable question because there are people who are in open relationships who still do have a primary, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably a choice. Yeah.
Right. And she said something similar, like, no, I don't really consider anyone. It's interesting from an outside perspective, though, because I'm watching these relationships unfold and I can see that there's very much a primary, if that makes sense. But I think it's like her kind of decision of how she's going to like focus and love and kind of not play out. That's such a trite way to put it, but play out their relationship. Um, so you, like I said, during the highly sensitive training had said I have to look at it again because it wasn't something I had heard of. It was the drama triangle and observer stance and how it shapes codependency. And I just was like, what are you talking about in the best way possible? So hit me up. I would love to hear if you could unpack this and describe how this impacts people in their relationships.
Absolutely. This is, I think, a little context can be important. This is a concept that I learned, I don't exactly know, but call it maybe 12 years ago or so. And I found it from a website by a woman named Lynn Forrest, Lynne, Forrest with 2 R's. And she wrote a book called The Guiding Principles for Life Beyond Victim Consciousness. And yeah, it's a long title. It's a long title. But I just started following her blog, and that's where I first learned this concept. And this concept really changed so many things for me and illuminated how we can get into a toxic dance with other people. And maybe because of my graphic design background, I love having easy visuals to take complex ideas and understand them a little bit better.
That makes sense now that I think about the worksheets you made out of my training. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I see you. Okay. So you discovered her blog or her book, rather.
Yeah. First her blog, and then later on I did buy her book. But the concept of the drama triangle, I found out, was developed by a psychiatrist named Stephen Karpman. I don't know
Okay.
if you ever heard of him. And so then Lynn Forrest, she likes to call it the victim triangle instead of the drama triangle. So I kind of use those terms interchangeably. But the concept behind it is that anytime we are not taking full responsibility for ourselves, and we maybe are getting into a toxic dance or a dysfunctional dynamic with our loved ones, we are typically on one of the places on the victim triangle. And it's the graphic is an upside down triangle, so it's on its point.
I'm like, literally, I almost want you to draw this.
Exactly, yes. And at the bottom of the triangle, in a very not comfortable looking position, is the position of being the victim in kind of like a one down position. And then in the other top 2 positions, it is a persecutor and a rescuer. And that the idea is that when you're on any position, and we may have a starting gate or a default position that might be where we typically begin this toxic dance, that we may start to move around to the different positions, but no matter where you are, you're in kind of like a victim state of consciousness, and it can also just not feel very good. Like it can be bringing up anger, resentment, blaming types of behavior, and we can get caught in a cycle of manipulation and reversing blame on each other. And it can bring up feelings of anger, fear, guilt, inadequacy, and we typically can learn this type of dance. I kind of call it like a toxic dance in our family of origin, so that when we become adults, it just feels very familiar to us, and that might become almost a default way that we interact with people. I'm happy to go a little bit further into that.
Yeah, no, as you were talking, there were questions that were popping up. So first, you said drama versus victim, and you said you kind of see those words interchangeably. Why do you feel like those are interchangeable? Because I feel like that's kind of important.
Yeah, I think because to me, it's just two different ways to explain the same general concept, but the drama triangle was the original name by Stephen Cartman, and I think it's just highlighting that it can feel like chaotic and like we're in a dramatic situation, not versus peaceful, versus having some state of inner peace. And the victim triangle just really highlighting that when you're in any position on that triangle, even only one of the places is named victim, part of the idea is that in any of those positions, you're partly in a victim state of mind because you have a belief in some way, shape, or form that you're not the creator of your life. Like life is happening
Oh,
into
okay.
you.
Uh-huh.
And also no matter where you'll end up in some way in that victim position, just feeling disempowered. Yeah.
It really reminds me a lot of that locus of control concept. I explore that a lot with my clients because a lot of people I'm working with are trying to get out of unhealthy relationships or to try to find their voice and power within one, or, hopefully so they'll get out of it. And I notice not just with whether or not someone stays in an unhealthy relationship, but also even whether or not someone manages their mental health in a way that works for them. Locus of control is a huge aspect of that. So when I say locus of control, I don't know if that's something that triggers like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, or
I don't know it as certainly as well as you do, but I'd love to hear how it lines up with what I'm talking about.
I mean, essentially it's this concept of power. Like, where do we receive and perceive power coming from in our life? And so if I have an internal locus of control, I feel like I happen to my life. I feel like things are happening around me and I can impact them. If I have an external locus of control, life is happening to me. And whether or not I like it, the things are going to continue happening. Now, I feel like there's nuance with this, though, because there's also this balance. I almost feel like this episode is coming out at a perfect time when we consider the rage book of, not rage, but like the craze over the let them theory. And Mel Robbins, and kind of like let them, let me, that whole like let's stop trying to control each other type of mindset. So I feel like there's this balance. And I think of highly sensitive people too when I think of this. I give this example sometimes with locus of control. When I was trying to get into grad school, there was a school I wanted to get into and I got waitlisted. And rightly so, because I applied like really late. But I got waitlisted and I have a pretty strong internal locus of control. And so I called the admissions office every day for almost 2.5 to 3 months to check on the status of my application, to the point where by the time I got in, they're like, Amelia, we don't know yet. Like, it was like they knew me. They knew I was calling. But something about that made me feel like I was making an impact, and I did get in eventually. So yay. So I think there's those moments where we can take charge of our life and take charge of our relationships and do something. But then there's this other side of this coin, I think, where if we try to do this too much, we can get really frustrated when we can't control our life and we can't control people. And I feel like that's where I feel like there's this intersection of radical acceptance with also having a strong internal feeling of empowerment and locus of control. So that's when I think about what you're saying as far as relationships go, all of this is kind of popping up in my head at the same time.
Absolutely. And this concept too, it applies to relationships and how we're interacting with other people. And it also relates to the relationship we have with ourselves.
Ooh, unpack.
You can also be,
what do you mean by that?
You can also be in those different positions with yourself. Mm-hmm. So like when you think about self-care. So I think that aligns really beautifully with what you were just talking about with the locus of control as well.
Mm-hmm. So you said also that when you enter a relationship, you might start at a different point in the triangle. Can you explain what you mean by that and what it would look like if you start at different points in the triangle? Because I think we're still kind of talking about this as a theory. It might be nice to put it into practice, like let people visualize what this is.
Absolutely. If it's okay with you, I'm going to take one step back and just maybe describe a little bit more about the three positions
Girl, you
and
do
then
whatever you want to do.
and then apply a real world example from my
Please,
own
yeah.
life. So just to describe the positions a little bit more, so that victim position at the bottom of the inverted triangle, in that position, one may feel hopeless, helpless, like they're not in control of their life. They may have a belief that other people need you to take care of them, and it's in that one down position. And so it can just feel not very good in that place. And then in the persecutor position, as it implies, that's in that one up position, meaning they may be like the behaviors might be yelling or screaming or, attempting to control other people. It could certainly apply to an abuser since we've had those type of conversations. But coming from that place, and all of these may have a core belief. So somebody in the persecutor position may have a core belief that the world is dangerous, people can't be trusted, so I need to get to them and hurt them before they hurt me. And then in the rescuer position, and this one I think is a little bit trickier to wrap one's head around, is somebody who goes into fix-it mode, and they may create some of their own internal value by feeling like they're maybe a little more superior than other people and they want to help them. So it almost looks like they're being very kind or generous, but it's partly where that is coming from. It may be coming from some codependent type of behaviors or seeking validation for their own self-worth by over helping other people. And it's tricky in a way because it can also keep somebody else in a victim state of mind where they may start to feel, I can't take care of myself. I need this other person to take care of me. So from any of those positions, it can just become like this toxic dance. But I wanted to just kind of give an overview of each of those roles. And then I'll give an example.
Now I have another question. So you were breaking down the difference between the different points on the triangle, and you had said something about the rescuer, which really triggered these questions, probably just a flow of questions I have now about codependency and how this plays out in the triangle. And then I was kind of making a connection that a lot of highly sensitive people, because of being so empathic and because of, dare I say, we kind of think we know what people need, right? Like it's literally one of the questions in Dr. Lane Aron's HSP questionnaire that you can sense what will make people feel more comfortable in the room. I mean, what a codependent question. And why is it our responsibility to make sure people are comfortable in the room, right? So it just is this kind of natural, I think, nervous system response because we know we act, we do. And then I had a guest once, a shaman that I love out of Asheville. She's amazing. I should send you the episode, Bloom Post. And she was talking about how HSPs are born, but empaths are created. And so I'm thinking about this idea of people who call themselves empaths, people who are highly sensitive and kind of know what the group needs, and then this rescuer point on the triangle and codependency. So I'm looking at all these things together. Do you see connections? Do you see differences? Like, how would you unpack that? Good luck.
That's a really great question, but I definitely see, for me, and I'm sure like you too, like the more I just study all of this stuff, I love when I start to see patterns or how things are overlaying onto other concepts. So yeah, I mean, I think the way, I think it also comes down to intention and also like how we're relating to ourselves. So we'll talk more about the antidote to the drama triangle, which is the observer triangle.
Absolutely.
But also, I think it's like if you think about self-talk, right? Like that's something we can think about the drama triangle. So victim self-talk will be saying, I can't take care of myself. Everything's hopeless. No one can help me. It's, I'm a wreck, that kind of thinking. persecutor self-talk might be, I'm such an idiot. Like, you start like persecuting yourself and having, beating yourself up with your own language to yourself. And that a rescuer type of self-talk, I'm trying to think of what that might be, but, coming from that codependent lens, it would be, I need to fix this, or I need to fix this situation, to the point where you're overextending yourself and exhausting yourself.
It's interesting because I would try not to do it, but I think if I were going to find myself in this triangle, I probably am more of a rescuer. And I think one of the other scripts or self-talks, it sounds innocent, but it could be something as innocent as, oh, I know what to do.
Exactly.
And it doesn't even really register that it might be overextending yourself, or it might be leaning towards compassion fatigue, because you just get so swept away, whether it be because of your family of origin, or whether it be because of, just, I don't know, past history, relationships. Something as innocent as, I know what to do, but what if they know what to do?
Exactly. And that's why the rescuer role can be tricky, is it can look like we're being super helpful and super generous, but what's at the heart of everything on the drama and the victim triangle is poor boundaries. Whether we don't have we may not have good boundaries, or we're overstepping boundaries with other people. And so it's important to be able to notice that. But in the rescuer position too, as you said, we could be not, we're disempowering people in, say, the victim position, by not allowing them to figure it out on their own, or allowing them to grow and navigate tough situations, if that makes sense.
As Mel would say, let them.
Exactly. And, so it does overlap with that in that sense too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, the boundaries piece, that makes a lot of sense, because when I think about how I function as a therapist, I think I have pretty good boundaries as a therapist. One of my favorite professors said, remember, you can't take credit for the positives or the negatives. Like, each client is the steward of their own life. You are there as witness and, to hold space for them. So I can very easily have ideas that pop in my head that would help someone, but I can hold them back because I know they need to get to that on their own. I can wait years for someone to get to it on their own. But if it's my husband,
right?
And I'm like, why wouldn't you take this supplement that's going to help you? Or why wouldn't you, it's like this, it's so much more difficult to do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, we've talked about in the past, even in my own relationships as a coach, right? And a therapist, we may default, just partly because of our professions, to that rescuer mode. But then we need to be careful when it's our family members. And I think that's definitely played into my friendships, or my relationship with my sister, when we kind of accidentally go into that mode of, I want to fix you, or I want to help right now. I know what you need to do, and so we need to be really careful about that. Yeah.
So what is the antidote then? Because I think we've laid out what it looks like. Well, actually, an example might be nice, because you said you did have an example from your life.
Exactly. Yeah. So in my family, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of context. My mother was 100% Italian. So she was very, used her hands to talk.
I was going to say, I can see this.
Exactly. So I'm 50% Italian at least. And she would raise her voice and get very passionate when she was talking. And she also had, I think, some unresolved depression and different resentments and traumas that I think she never really healed from. So I would say my mom defaulted into that persecutor role. And as I was growing up, again, you might change roles, but when I became, say, the rebellious teenager, I might go into some of those roles. And then my father was a very kind of quiet man, very much kind of like I would think of him as like a saint, and just their relationship never totally made sense to me. But just to give you an example, maybe I would come home from school in my teenage years, And I came home and my mother was yelling at my father, you good for nothing. You forgot to take the trash out. So in that moment, she would be in the persecutor position and my father would be in the victim position. And as I was coming into my own, I might have had the energy of the rescuer of, don't talk to dad that way. He's a good man. He worked hard all day, and so I might be attempting to rescue my father, who was a grown adult. He didn't need my rescuing.
Right. Not your role
Exactly. Not
or
my
your rodeo.
Exactly. Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yep.
And also maybe I started raising my voice. So also you can even be in multiple positions at once. So
Okay.
when I became like a bold, brazen teenager, I might start yelling at my mother. So I'm kind of in the rescuer role towards my father, but also persecutor role towards my mother.
So
And
different
then
relationships can pull you into different points of the triangle.
yes, you can kind of get hooked, like emotionally hooked onto the triangle. And then my father might change roles. You shouldn't talk to your mother that way. So you can kind of see how we all start switching roles around
Right.
there. And it doesn't feel good. And so that kind of drama situation can start to repeat itself, even though it doesn't feel very good into our adult life, just because it seems so familiar. So that was like a quick example that I can give you.
I'm looking off in space, like thinking about family of origin, my role now. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks.
And then even in my house here, there's 3 adults because I'm in a polyamorous household. So I live with my husband and my other partner. And same thing, we have default roles we may go into. My husband is the peacemaker. So he definitely defaults typically to the rescuer role first. And then my other partner and I, we might go back and forth between persecutor and victim. And then my husband might be trying to insert himself to make peace. But we all end up kind of stepping on each other's toes, and it doesn't feel good. So just to give another example of how that happens.
Right. So how do you fix it?
Exactly. So what's fascinating is a lot of times I've seen people talk about the drama or the victim triangle, but they don't usually talk about the antidote, which is what I love about Lynn Forrest's work. So the antidote, and I love the visual, is a right side up triangle. So it's balanced, it's grounded, and each of the roles has changed. So the victim role, which used to be at the bottom, is now at the top, and it changes to the observer. And so when we think about
Oh,
the
okay.
observer, yeah, it's being able to, first of all, just observe what's happening. Observe, hey, this doesn't feel good. Hey, maybe we're on the victim or the drama triangle, or maybe I'm repeating patterns from my childhood in this moment now. So just being able to observe yourself, observe how you're talking to yourself, observe everyone else's behavior, because that is in and of itself a more empowering place to be. It's even why we might hire a therapist or a coach, because they're able to observe what our blind spots are and enlighten us if we're not able to see it ourselves.
Right. And or even give a space. I find a lot of times it's not even me giving the insights. It's me giving them a space where they can get their nervous system regulated enough where they're not on guard or on defense or in the, drama triangle where they can hear themselves. Like they can actually connect with how they feel about something.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've got observer. And how come, just curious, how come, and maybe they all kind of interchange. Why is it that which one did you say? The victim becomes the observer. Is it because that's just a natural thing? Victims tend to view everything, or is that just part of the triangle?
Well, it's also, we may have a default starting position, but one thing I want to make sure is we're not kind of like labeling people like you're
Okay, we are not pathologizing the triangle.
exactly.
Okay,
It's
fair.
just, yeah, it's just moving over to any of the positions, but just observing that you're even not feeling very good or you're not
Yeah.
speaking to yourself kindly is just simply a quick, easy way to move from the drama triangle over into the observer triangle.
I
So yeah,
deeply appreciate the clarification because in my mind, I was seeing like the victim morphing into the top of
right,
the triangle.
right.
Okay.
You could think of it as like a bridge, a quick
Okay.
bridge over the observer triangle is just being like, huh, I'm noticing or I'm observing that this feels crappy.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
or I'm observing that, I think I was in one of the positions on the drama trial. And again, coming from that place of self-responsibility, how am I contributing to this? But also observing other people's behavior, but not in a blaming sort of a way, because that would
Right.
put me back on the persecutor type of position, but in a taking in information way. One quote I love that really aligns well here is bring the data, not the drama. So
Ooh, I like
isn't that great?
that. It kind of reminds me too. Have you ever heard of Dear Man?
And maybe tell me more.
It's an acronym for an interpersonal effectiveness skill from dialectical behavioral therapy from DBT. And it stands for describe, express, assert, reinforce, mindfully appearing confident and negotiating, which is always kind of a wishy-washy one. And I'll walk my clients through, kind of how to do that step by step. But one of the things that so many people have a tendency to do with describe is they will like laundry list everything related to something. And I have to remind them if you want to be heard, you need to stick to your point. And the best way to stick to your point is to use your five senses. And maybe not like I taste, but things like I hear, I notice, I guess I smell. Okay, maybe five senses is an odd thing, but you know what I'm saying. Like use those skills of, to your point, observation, and then narrow in the observation about the specific situation as opposed to you make me feel this way. And then this one time 10 years ago, you also, like kind of rallying all these things into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I haven't heard that, so thanks for sharing that. So that's the general idea with the observer is again noticing and observing, and like you said, with your five senses is great. And then the persecutor position can transform over into the asserter, which is also implying healthy
Oh, okay.
boundaries. Yeah. So being able to assert your point of view, like giving yourself a voice, being able to share your needs and your wants, your desires, talk about your feelings, doing it in a respectful, calm, and compassionate manner versus screaming your head off, because that would be back on the drama triangle.
Right. I again got I'm like loving this so much. It's making me think of folks who are I think anger management is a terrible term. I don't think we need to manage it like stuff it in a box and get rid of it. It's more like anger comfort, feeling comfortable with our anger and getting to know it. And it's kind of our friend versus our enemy. But that's
Yes.
one thing I noticed folks who get stuck in the persecutor space or the anger space, it's generally because of that lack of feeling empowered. Right. And so if you translate it to asserting, like you're persecuting, your antidote is then asserting. And how do you assert? Well, oh, I love that.
Exactly. Yeah. From what you just said a moment ago, that from that persecutor role of getting defensive or I'm not in control, so therefore I have to raise my voice, you can see
Right.
how that still has that victim energy in it. So it's
Totally.
trying to like break out of it by that one up position attempt. Whereas asserting, and I love what you said earlier, I often say instead of speaking from your anger, which would be in that persecutor role, speaking for your anger, just like you said, I imagine
Oh,
like putting your arm
yes.
around it and speaking on behalf of whatever it is you were angry about. Like maybe your boundaries were violated, maybe you were being mistreated, but being able
Right.
to speak about it in a calm and respectful manner. That would be on
Right.
the observer triangle.
Love that. That's like parts work. Like
Yeah.
you notice your angry part. And I really like this because it's kind of integrating a lot of different things, but into action.
Yeah, so do I. And again, I love a clear thing that I can picture in my mind. And then the last one is the rescuer then can become a nurturer. Nurturer
Oh,
meaning
okay.
you're able to say, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm your friend. Again, that kind of idea of putting your arm around somebody,
Yeah.
but also saying, and I believe you have the tools to make it through, or I am thrilled to see you grow through this and learn through this experience that you're having. So you're showing nurturing, supportive love, and you're not doing it for them. You're saying,
Right.
If you need help, I'm over here."
Yeah. which can be really hard for someone who is typically more codependent or finds himself as a rescuer because it takes a little trust and patience. Do you find that?
Yeah, it takes trust and patience within yourself and trusting your own intuition. Because that's the other thing too, is remembering that this can all be internal too. Like a rescuer might abandon their own needs and self-care, whereas somebody who's in that nurturing headspace, they're saying, my health is important. And I realize that I need to take care of my health. I need to put on my oxygen mask first before I can be there for my loved ones. So thinking of it too in terms of your own way you're relating to yourself. Asserting, meaning remembering that my voice matters, my needs matter. I can speak up for myself. I have the ability to do that, and I'm going to do it right now, whatever that is. And again, being able to observe what's going on without any blame or judgment or criticism. Again, it's all a skill. It's not like we're humans. We're going to, eventually sometimes fall into the
Oh,
other
totally.
roles. Yeah. But also, hopefully, as I'm describing that, you're seeing how on the observer triangle side, there's healthy boundary setting, with other people, and also like healthy boundaries around yourself and your own self-care, and remembering that you are the creator of your life,
Right.
from that place of empowerment.
I love that too when I think about high sensitivity, and it doesn't just have to be like someone who's an HSP. It could be you had a really long day at work, or you've just had like a crap week. And that the more dysregulated or sensitive we are, it feels like what you're saying, and I'm in kind of envisioning this personally, the less well-resourced I am, the more likely I am to slip into the drama triangle. And if I do, I can now check in. Okay, am I being the rescuer? Am I being the persecutor? Oh, I'm definitely persecuting right now. For me, I notice first is noticing, second is voicing, but sometimes I just need space. Like I just need, okay, I need to separate myself from this interaction so I can get regulated, so I can get into what was the other triangle? Not the drama triangle, but
The observer triangle. Yeah,
the
just called
observer triangle. Right. So for me, I feel like space, naming it, acknowledging it, and getting space would be important. Are there other ways you think people can shift? Or how do you do it personally if you notice you're in the drama triangle?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, it's simply just noticing when you're feeling dysregulated or you're really upset, and you're triggered, and how does that feel inside of you, and giving me like go again. You're even going into that observer mode just by noticing, right?
Right.
So, oh, I notice that I'm feeling hot in the face, or I feel something in my gut, and I notice that what I call we're on the field of battle, like where we're kind of throwing little jabs at other people, we're interrupting each other, and we notice the feeling is starting to feel a little contentious. So
Do you
just being
say
able
to
to,
your partner, we're in the field of battle?
I do, because that's probably the work I do and they know what I mean, but
Yeah. No, but I'm thinking that's kind of perfect, but you'd almost have to have your partner listen to this episode to know in the world you're talking about.
yeah. You just also say like, this is feeling really crappy right now. Like it's an
Right,
interaction
right.
we're having. You can just be honest about it. Which again, even voicing that again kind of puts you on that observer triangle by giving yourself permission to voice it. But I would say, yeah, I think another way that I move through it is just taking a moment, taking a deep breath, and just saying, what is it that I'm needing right now? You might come to the conclusion, maybe I'm needing some space. Oh my gosh, I forgot to eat breakfast.
Yeah.
I slept like crap last night. I think I need a
Right.
nap. And then another question I typically ask is, from a place of self-responsibility, how am I contributing to what's going on right now, and how can I move myself or this interaction, over to this other place, onto the observer triangle, and do I need to take care of myself in any way? I guess another great question is, did one of my boundaries or rights get violated? And do I maybe need to do a little bit of self boundary work? And before I go to talk to my loved ones about, because sometimes they may have overstepped a boundary that we never told them we had.
Right. And that's our responsibility
Exactly. So it's another way
to
to put
express it.
ourselves in that place of self-responsibility, which of course is more empowering.
Right. Hopefully, this doesn't completely obliterate all your worksheets, but I am just feeling like the second triangle, the observer triangle, to me sounds like a connecting triangle, right? So you've got the drama and then you've got the connection. Like it just feels like what you're talking about is like when you can observe and when you can do those things, it just sounds like the way to actually connect with people. So I love that. And that's the neat thing about this world of coaching and psychology. You can take all these concepts and kind of, I think, put them in different languages that make sense to different people, which is wonderful. So when you think about a time in your life where you flipped from the drama triangle to the observer triangle, is there a relationship that you feel like has maybe improved, maybe your relationship with yourself?
Yeah, I'll tackle that from two sides. I definitely have gone through periods of my life while I was building my business, my career as a coach, where I was abandoning some of my self-care needs. Maybe let myself run a little ragged because I was telling myself a story. I need to work harder. I don't need to see my friends this weekend. I'll just keep working. And because I'm building a business and this is helping people. And you can also see how, in some ways, I was in the rescuer role there. Like, I need to save the world with my work. But I was also persecuting
Watch
myself.
out, anarchist, I'm coming for you.
Yeah. And persecuting myself by not properly taking care of myself, which then kind of puts me in the victim position. So that's what's interesting too, is you can be in all three of them at the same time.
Wait, can you pause? You just said persecute yourself by not taking care of yourself. That is interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, meaning that if I'm telling myself that, from the rescuer role, like I've got to keep working and working and working, but I'm not eating properly. I'm not going to the gym. I'm literally not taking care of the physical vessel that houses
Right.
my brain that is partly there to serve my clients.
So it's almost like the persecuting action could be you don't deserve the self-care. So you keep going. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right. Like I'm
That's
worthy of-
interesting.
Yeah, or I don't deserve to take care of myself. I need to.
Yeah.
So again, it's like from both. It's kind of from all three of those at the same time. Like one part of you is saying, "I need to save the world," so that's the rescuer role, and I'm gonna sacrifice my own physical health to do it because I don't. Yeah, like you said, I don't. I don't deserve to take care of my body because it's more important for me to take care of everybody else. But at the same time, you're also putting yourself in that. I'm going to run myself so ragged that now somebody else has to take care of me and remind me to eat.
Wow.
So that might be in the victim role,
I could see this playing out too for folks who maybe are neurodiverse, who have kind of like, I think of ADHD when there's like that failure schema or that idea that every time I try something, I never finish it, or I always mess up, or, everyone thinks that I'm not going to accomplish this. So it's like, I'll show them. And it's almost like the I'll show them energy can feel very persecuting.
Exactly.
Wow.
Because it's
And
kind of got some vengeance in there.
yeah, like it's all about intention, like you were saying. And have you heard of the acronym HALT?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like, can you unpack that? Because I feel like HALT would be a perfect thing when you hit your observer point of the triangle to halt yourself.
Yeah, so I love that term HALT. So for your listeners who may not have heard of it, that stands for, the way I describe it, is somebody hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And the way I often talk about it is, if so, it might not be a good time to be having a heavy, deep, and real or emotionally charged situation. It might be more of a time to take care of yourself, whatever those physical needs
Right.
are. Before you approach somebody else, so that you both can be in a more regulated space and have a more productive conversation.
Right. So sometimes you need to halt yourself out of the drama triangle, like have a snack. You can literally transition from one triangle to the other. That's what the Snickers commercial was all about. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and that brings me to a great point. Like another way to get out of this is, say you're in a dynamic with your partner that's not going well. One way to get into that observer, nurturer, asserting thing is if you say to your partner, "Did you eat breakfast today? Maybe we need to stop and have something to eat because I don't remember seeing you eat breakfast." So like it's a way that you're nurturing as well as observing what's going on, but also asserting in a way like, I don't know that we should continue talking right now because I think we need to take care of our needs first.
Wow. I'm seeing right now how it would be so tricky to be like, am I nurturing or am I rescuing in that moment?
Well,
Right?
I think so you come back to that place of intention,
Yeah.
that intentionality, and then how we're posing. Is it posing a curious question? Hey, I'm wondering, did you eat breakfast? Or is it, you need to eat breakfast?
Yeah. No, totally. So when you lean in with curiosity and questions that invite an actual response, because people, when you fling a question at someone and you really are not looking for a response, that's not curiosity. That's persecuting, right?
Right, right.
Oh, I
Kind of like,
love
I know better
that.
than you need to do it.
Yes. Well, gosh, I could talk to you forever about this. And now I'm literally thinking I want to do another workshop with you, but we should like do it on this from a totally different angle, like a conflict resolution workshop or something.
Ooh, I like it.
Right?
Yeah,
Wheels are
that'd be
turning. Yeah, that'd be fun. So I'm so happy you came. I can't believe we've gotten to work together so much, but you've literally never been on my podcast. And this was such a good conversation. So I want to ask you if people listening could do one thing today that would really help them live this concept out today, what would you ask for them to do and encourage them to do? And then also reminding them, I know you mentioned in the beginning, but where can they find you, stay connected? And I say you cover concepts that hit people who are in non-monogamous, untraditional, anarchist, and also traditional relationships too. So I think anyone who just has a relationship could benefit from your work, honestly.
Thank you. I absolutely appreciate that. And I love talking with you, and I appreciate you asking me to come on the podcast. So for your first question, I would say I always love to come at it with powerful questions. So simply like being able to ask yourself, how am I feeling? No, really, how am I feeling? And giving yourself some space to think about that and take a deep breath and allow yourself to have whatever those feelings are. And then following that up with, what am I maybe needing right now? Do I need to go have breakfast? Do I need to call a friend? Do I need to take a nap or go inside myself? And then in terms of this concept, coming from that place of self-responsibility, how can I look at this situation, this moment, and ask myself, how am I in a noticing, in a loving way, not in a blaming way, how am I contributing to what I'm experiencing right now? And what's the next best action I can take to get to a better place in whatever this dynamic is that I'm in, whether it's a dynamic with yourself or a dynamic with other people. And then I always love a final question is just, what would love do? Whether that's love for other people or also self-love. What would love do right now? I think is a great question to help people get to the next best step.
I love that so much because one of my things I'll say to my kiddos, if even my husband, but if they're kind of getting at each other, I'll be like, okay, so if we talk in a loving tone, what would we be saying right now?
I like that.
So that probably is to your point. Well, Kitty, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to share this episode during February. It's going to be coming out, the month of relationships, all different types. And yeah, you'll have to come back someday or we'll do a workshop and just stay connected. So be well, everyone. Goodbye.